Hare Krishna. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesis Sunyavadi Paskatyade Satarane Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchakalpatubhischa Kipasindaviyavata Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo. So we're on lesson 8, putting it all together. And our meditation, if we could say it together, but please stay on mute. Agnenaya Supataraya Yasman Vishvani Deva Vayunani Vidman Yuyo Yashmad Juranam Meno Buyistam Te Nama Uktim Videma. O my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances, falling at the ground on your feet. O my Lord, please lead me on the right path to reach you. And since you know all that I have done in the past, please free me from the reactions to my past sins so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. So we are going to be looking at one can train pigeons to carry one in outer space, done according to the hermeneutical path. All right. So if you haven't done your home fun, I'm so sorry. If you haven't done your home fun, you have 20 minutes to do it now while the rest of us talk about it, because we're going to talk about it in plenary for 20 minutes. Then we're going to have a 15-minute breakout room so that everyone gets a chance to discuss their conclusions with each other. So you will have 20 minutes to do it now if you haven't already done it. Please turn off your speaker so you won't hear us discussing it, and you will have 20 minutes to do it now. But we are going to have, for those of you who did do your home fun and had fun with your home fun, we are going to have a general discussion now. So anybody like to share, anybody that did this? I'm assuming that most of you did this at home. Would you like to share what you came up with? This was for outreach. This was an outreach situation about pigeons carrying one into outer space. I grew up in New York City and there were lots and lots of pigeons, and I can't even imagine how could I train pigeons to carry me into outer space. I don't know. So what did you come up with? Well, thank you. And it's interesting what you did. Instead of using a hermeneutical path, which is what we were expecting you to do, you went back to lesson 7 and you used the outreach plan from lesson 7. So I like that you did that. I'm hoping somebody did a hermeneutical path and they can take us through that way. But I like that you did that because it demonstrated that there's more than one way to go about this. You know, we put this in lesson 8 because we wanted people to have experience with another experience with the hermeneutical path besides just lesson 2. But I really like that you said, oh, okay, instead of using a hermeneutical path, I'm going to go to the form for outreach and use that. And I really like what you said, you know, if I can accept a spiritual airplane, then why can't I accept a pigeon airplane? And by the way, this particular example is one that I personally struggle with, again, because I grew up around a lot of pigeons. So thank Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Anybody who would like to share using a hermeneutical path? What did you do with the second part of the hermeneutical path? You say that this statement is a restatement of Siddhanta. You can only use Sambandha if the statement is a restatement of Siddhanta. So you can train pigeons to carry you in outer space. Is that a statement of Siddhanta? Is that one of the 10 statements of Siddhanta? If the 10 principles of Siddhanta that we have in your participants manual on page 18. But is it a restatement of that? Is it just a way of saying there are conditioned living entities? I understand that. But could you say that you can train pigeons to take you to outer space? Is that an eternal, universal, and transcontextual truth? So that statement, you can train pigeons to take you in outer space, does that apply to all people at all places and all times? Okay, so that means it's not in category 1. Would it be in category 2? Is it applicable universal, that it's applicable to everyone? Eternal, is it always true? But here it's a particular context. So that would be option 2. Is that the case? Oh, sorry, it's a very particular context, but what is the universal eternal truth here? Would it be possible also to say that it's not a universal, eternal, or transcontextual truth at all? That this applies to some people, sometimes in some places, but it helps us to understand eternal truth. Well, if it can't help us to understand eternal truth, how could it then be an eternal truth? Is it eternally true that somebody, and it's true for everybody, that you can, in all times and places, that you can train pigeons? I mean, I can't. So anyway, as far as I know, this is not an eternal, universal, transcontextual truth, nor is it an eternal, universal truth in a particular context. So it's not an eternal, universal truth that anybody in any time, in any place can access these kind of subtle mystic power. Is it? Is that an eternal, universal truth? It's not. Okay. So then it would have to go in either the third or fourth category, that it's supporting something that's eternal, universal, and transcontextual. So I like what somebody put here in the chat. It supports the Siddhanta that there is another realm beyond this material realm. To reach that, we can use subtle or spiritual means. Excellent. And so that puts us smack dab in our third category. And this would really help us in outreach, because we can say to people, this is not a statement of eternal, universal, transcontextual truth, but it's pointing to the fact that there are conditioned souls and there are liberated souls. And there are what about potencies of the Lord? Does it point to that one, right? That he has his external, inferior, or material energy, superior energy, or in Dasmula Tattva, Krishna is endowed with all energies. It seems like it might point to that one, right? That we as the jivas also have these energies in a limited way. So it points to that. And because it points to that, it's in number 3. Okay, I'm going to ask one more person. Thank you so much for letting me interrogate you. And Okay, that was also very nice. So you did a lot what Krishnadas Kaviraj did. You did, but you didn't use the hermeneutical path. Yes, well, that's included, but then in the hermeneutical path, the second step is you specifically compare the statement to Siddhanta. Okay, and in the third step of the hermeneutical path, then there's like a summary of the hermeneutical tools with specific questions. But thank you. I thought that was also very well done. And again, I like that there's a demonstration of different ways of going about this. I'm actually really happy about that. I like it when people like go beyond what we have. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so we have about 1 more minute before we're going to discuss this in our groups. And I'm hoping that most of you actually went through this with a hermeneutical path, but if you did it in other ways, that's also fine. I mean, if I were using the hermeneutical path, again, I'd look at my own qualifications and say, well, I'm going to have some difficulty with this because, you know, I'm going to associate it with ordinary pigeons. I'm going to come to the Siddhanta, and we already went through that. I'm going to say it's supporting Siddhanta, especially the idea that Krishna has many energies. And when I'm looking at the hermeneutical tools in part 3, I look at, is this relevant to me in terms of my devotional service? Well, okay, in terms of attaining different ideas of different potencies and powers. And the context of the verse, and I really like the discussion of the context of the verse. There could be a spiritual airplane with Dhruva Maharaj. Why not something else, right? And then how does this instruct me to understand itself and its statements? It instructs me to do that by having faith in things that are mystical, having faith in things that are unusual. Is this statement at a beginning, intermediate, or advanced level? I'd put it kind of at an intermediate level. And the genre and the mood of the work as a whole, well, okay, it is giving me something historical here. And then the 4 traditional context questions, which is, of course, one of our tools. Are there ambiguities in the language? I like that Vraj Kumari looked at that one, that there's an ambiguity with the word pigeons. Okay, and then looking at other things that are also said, not taking this out of context, looking at other examples. So that would be how I would go through the hermeneutical tools. Okay, we're going to have breakout rooms. There's going to be either 2 or 3 people in your rooms, 15 minutes. So that allows each person to have 5 minutes. So if each of you could just really get to your conclusion, if you talked about Siddhanta or your experience with doing this, for 3 minutes, then 2 minutes where the other people can give you feedback. Obviously, if you have just 2 in your room, you can take a little bit more time. So 3 minutes to present what you did, 2 minutes to get feedback from the other 2 people, then switch to another person, 3 minutes to present what you did, 2 minutes to get feedback. All right, well, I hope that you all learned something from looking at what the other people had done and discussing it. So now we're going to go on to the next one, which is on page 69 and 70. So this was about, instead of outreach, this was about devotees, people in the devotee community. And you had 2 women who showed you 2 statements that appear to be contradictory. Right? One statement was that no matter, basically, please the husband in all circumstances. And even if the husband, what is it here, is always very angry, that, what was it, no matter how irritable and cruel he may be. So how a woman could conquer the heart of her husband, no matter how irritable and cruel he may be. And then the other woman shows you that a chaste woman is advised not to agree to serve a fallen husband. She should not be a slave while her husband is Naradama, the lowest among men. And so we were going to look at this using this particular tool, tool 37. And this is on page 70. So I'm assuming that most of you did your home fun and that you've already done this at home. So we're going to have 20 minutes to discuss this in plenary. And any of you who did not do this as home fun, you have 20 minutes to do it now before we go into a breakout room where you'll be discussing it. So turn off your speaker for 20 minutes and do page 69 and 70 now if you didn't do it at home. All right. So anybody who did this as home fun who'd like to discuss? Okay, well, I'm going to stop you right there. That, and again, I'm figuring if you volunteered, you don't mind. So here, Siddhanta just simply means the conclusion of this particular argument. It doesn't mean our Gaudiya Vaishnava universal, eternal, transcontextual Siddhanta. It means what are we concluding in this particular argument? So the word Siddhanta, like the word conclusion, we can say, what's your conclusion for this argument? Or what's our ultimate conclusions about reality? But anyway, go on. That particular step, and I can't emphasize this enough, that particular step of comparing your difficult statement to eternal, universal, transcontextual truths is a very useful thing to do all the time. And as I said, when we were on lesson 2, and I think I said in lesson 1, if that's the only thing you learn how to do from these 8 sessions, that's something that's very valuable. But what is your conclusion on this particular thing? I really, really like that Shaivana Muni, even though he was very angry and irritable, he was a very high soul. And therefore his anger and irritableness couldn't have been abusive, could it? What did you get for number 7? Thank you. Thank you. Yes. The reason that we've done a deep dive on these 2 tools, as I think we brought this up in the class on tools, class 5, was that these 2 tools are widely applicable and fairly easy to learn. So these 2 tools, 37 and 24, can be used in a wide variety of hermeneutical situations, and they're really easy to learn. So also the sample hermeneutical path can be used for almost anything. This concept, I look at myself, I compare, is this an eternal, universal, transcontextual truth? And then I use tools. Now, some of the tools you can use are 37 and 24. And the sample hermeneutical path, it can only be used for a statement. It can't be used for a topic. So you have to pull some statement out of your topic before you can compare it to Siddhanta. If you're going to talk about a topic like how should devotees dress, or where should we give charity, you wouldn't be able to use this hermeneutical path. You'd have to have another one. But yeah, and as far as the tool section, we felt if we focused on having everyone in this basic course learn these 2 tools well, or at least at a reasonable level, they're widely applicable. Certainly in a next level course, one of the things we could do, and I've been really meditating on, do we want to develop a next level course, considering how long it takes to do this? One of the things that we could do would be a deep dive into other hermeneutical tools. Also, in the sample hermeneutical path, we have, of course, hermeneutical tool 24 is listed there in a sample hermeneutical path, the 4 traditional context questions. But we've also taken a lot of other of the 40 tools and we put them into a really simple question format. So even someone who's a beginner in hermeneutics using the sample hermeneutical path can, by asking themselves these questions, often come up with a satisfactory answer. Thank you for asking me that. That's page 13 of the foundation document. 11, okay. 12, 13 in the foundation document is really foundational to really have practice going through that process. So do you want to share with us what you did on page 70? But I think everything you mentioned, you could find, pretty sure, I mean, I just was listening quickly, I don't have it in writing. We could find supporting statements in Shastra for that. I mean, one of my favorites is where Krishna tells his wife Rukmini, a husband and wife should be equal, you know, when he says equal in renunciation. And especially, it's really interesting, there's so much in the Shastra about Anulom and Pratilom marriages, and a man can marry a woman who's beneath him in qualities, but a woman should never marry a man who's beneath her in qualities. So it's fascinating. I think it's really fascinating that you can have, best to be equal. If it's not equal, the man can be higher, but you never want an unequal relationship where the woman is higher. Why? Because then she's going to have to take a subordinate role to someone who's beneath her. So what do you have for number 7? Thank you. Thank you so much. We have time for one more person. Any volunteer? I may just call on somebody if there's no volunteer. Okay, so she would leave him but not get divorced. Wow. All right. And what do you have for number 7? Listing other qualities, principles, and other tools. Nothing there. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, and what do you list as other qualities, principles, and tools that would be used? Okay, thank you. Thank you. I really like that. Let me move on. We have just barely time to look at one more. Can you tell us your conclusion? Just look at 6 and 7. Okay, and what do you have for number 7? I can look at 12 and 14. Texts are properly understood and explained in terms of the intended reader or audience. An insight emerges throughout dialogue and through mediation, resolution, or reconciliation of paradox, apparent contradiction, and multiple views. And what number tools did you have? 23 is consider one's own cultural and individual perspectives along with one's own life experiences. That would really color how one would see this. And what was the other one besides 23? 37. Oh, well, that's the one we're using here. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to do, thank you. This was really invaluable. What we're going to do now is again go into breakout rooms. There's 2 or 3 people in each room. Again, it's 15 minutes. So in the breakout room, if you can please, if you have 3 people, there should be 5 minutes for each person. So 3 minutes to discuss what you had and 2 minutes for feedback. I think focus on points number 5, 6, and 7. You don't have to discuss your points 1 through 4. Just discuss 5, 6, and 7 so that everybody can get a time. Okay. All right. I hope that was helpful and that you gained something from each other. So now we're going to look at C, Exploration 8.1C, which is on in your participants handbook on pages 71 and 72. So I can just briefly share my screen. So here we're looking at, this is a devotee, also within a devotee, not outreach, but fairly new devotee, 6 months in the movement, and brings up dishonor is worse than death, and don't misuse my friendship and lose your prestige. And then another statement, one who's equipoise in honor and dishonor, fame and infamy, is very dear to me. So how can these both be true? That you should fight for the sake of honor because dishonor is worse than death, and you should fight without caring about honor and dishonor. So here we're using tool 24, and we're going through tool 24 once for the first statement from Bhagavad Gita 2.34, and then going through it a second time for the second statement from Bhagavad Gita 12:18 to 19, and then on the basis of that, reaching a conclusion. So again, I'm assuming that the vast majority of you have done this for home fun. If you haven't done it for home fun, we're going to be discussing it in plenary for 20 minutes. So please turn off your speaker and do it now so that you can be prepared for the break room. All right, so pages 71 to 72, and anybody who would like to share what they have done for that. Thank you. Very well done. Very well done. I think it's excellent. You don't need to be sorry about that at all. It's perfect. Okay, well, let's look. I'm glad that you brought that up. And again, I want to emphasize that we've really worked at making this a safe space so that we can say, how do I do that? Or I don't know if I agree with this, or, you know, thank you for modeling that. Why don't we look, and I'm going to, first of all, I just want to say that I love your analysis, that one is for people in Varnashram and one is for people in Bhakti. And let me just go back to sharing my screen here for a minute. And I'm going to go back to page 48, 46 and 47, I'm sorry, in the participants manual, 46 and 47. All right. So here we give some samples of what does that mean? And let's look at the first one, which was about a worshiping work itself. How does it go about teaching what it teaches? So the answer for that one was, it goes about teaching in a very unusual way by denigrating the highest philosophy and instead apparently teaching something atheistic. It's not directly teaching, but is indirect and hidden. This is where Krishna is telling Nanda Maharaj, just worship work. The relationship between the overall text, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and these specific verses is also unusual, as the Srimad Bhagavatam throws out all cheating religion, but these texts at face value are propounding atheism. The texts do, however, lead to the highest purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam, as they bring the residents of Vrindavan directly to the worship of Krishna and of Govardhan Hill. So they are in accord with the purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam while seeming to contradict it. Let's look at this question of how, again, for the next example that we gave on page 47 in the participants' handbook of untrustworthy women. This is where Mohini is telling the demons, don't trust me. So for the answer to how, so Mohini did intend to cheat the demons, and she's revealing in truthfulness that she will do so. However, it is presented so that the demons will think it is sarcastic and trust her even more than they would have otherwise. It is teaching about the psychology of demoniac beings rather than teaching about the nature of women. So both of those examples are related to 205. Some statements in Shastra are intentionally delusive or obscure, while others are direct. So that's some example of how to use the how portion. And well, am I glad that you brought that up. And I'd like to just, anyone else who'd like to volunteer, specifically, what did you do for the how portion of these? Do we have any volunteers? If we don't have any volunteers, I will call on someone. That's good. That's good. Wow, I like that. I really like that. Is there anything else you've written for these that you would like to share with us? That's so beautiful, because what you've just said brings out a really important thing with hermeneutics in general, that even a conversation that's from the same person to the same person at a different point may be different. In fact, it may be opposite, right? Like Prabhupada told this one devotee, don't eat so much. And the devotee said, Prabhupada, when I first came, you told me to eat a lot. And Prabhupada said, did you believe me then? Then believe me now. You know, or even with the ashram system, we can tell somebody, you know, when they're 25, I really think you should get married. And then we can tell them when they're 55, I really think you should renounce. And it may appear to be opposite instructions, and given from the same person to the same person, but at a different point in their development. Let's hear from someone that we haven't heard from today. Thank you. And I think that we can learn a lot from these examples in terms of our own preaching, what we present to people at different points. Yes. Is there anyone who hasn't yet contributed? Anyone else? That was so insightful, that would like to share, because I see the hands raised are from people who normally raise their hands. By the way, one reason we do breakout groups from an educational point of view is that there always are people who simply will not contribute in a large group. They just won't. And if you pick on them, they'll be very uncomfortable. So if you put them in small groups, they'll say something, but in large groups, they won't. And that's about 60% of the population. I'm sure you've noticed that there's just like the same 4 or 5 people that usually contribute in a big group. that's actually something that could be corrected in the course, to bring that up also with the Mohini example, because ultimately, how does it point towards Krishna, that principle, that tool rather, tool number one, how does it point towards Krishna? And with the Mohini example, it was showing that the demons can't accept things directly, can they? They have to be cheated. They have to be manipulated. They have to be lied to. They're not willing to just surrender. You know, she has to come and say, hey, you know, I'm not trustworthy. Whereas the demigods can be dealt with directly. The demigods can be dealt with, you know, hey, just sit over there and we'll take care of you, which again is a supportive principle to the idea that there's conditioned and liberated souls, and brings to the whole Bhagavatam as it is, that if you really want the best benefit, if you really want the nectar, work in such a way that you can be dealt with directly. Don't have a selfish demoniac mentality where you may deal with the Lord, but the Lord will simply cheat you. And the Lord may even tell you, hey, I'm going to cheat you. and still you'll simply be cheated. So that was beautiful. But I like how you're relating both of these statements, yes, to the overall Bhagavad Gita. They're both about surrender, but one is surrender on the level that I'm a Kshatriya and I care about honor. And so I should surrender as a Kshatriya in this world. And the other is I'm a soul and I'm a devotee, and I should surrender as a devotee to what Krishna likes. Is that all right? Go into our breakout rooms now. And the same thing, we're going to do 15 minutes. There should be just 2 or 3 people in each breakout room. So in that 15 minutes, each person gets at least 3 minutes to explain what they have and 2 minutes of reflection from the other person. And then we'll rejoin for any general discussion. So we're going to go to our breakout rooms now. And again, just discussing this particular one on page 71 and 72. All right. So we just have a few more minutes. I'd like to just point out that if any of you, I was asked privately, so just to reply, if any of you would like to give any dakshina for this course, you're certainly welcome to contact any of the individual instructors and arrange to give a donation. If you want to give a general donation to the Shastric Advisory Council, which I could then distribute, just write me and I'll give you the information as to how to do that. So I want to just look at this self-assessment. So looking at our participants handbook, pages 73 through 78. So 73 through 78, this is a self-assessment. We estimate it will take about 45 minutes. And participants in our other courses have talked about how helpful this was. Now, the way this works is that you write down the answer. Then after you write the answer, you go to the documents and check. And then you give yourself a score. Now, we suggest you do a whole page and then check, because otherwise you'll see the answer to question 2 when you're checking for the answer to question 1. So we suggest that you do a whole page of answers, then go and check, then give yourself a score. So then at the end of that section, then you put a star by any way you got a 4 or a 5, and circle any way you got a 1 or a 2. That's for just basic knowledge retention. Any of you know Bloom's taxonomy, that's level 1. And then we're going on to deeper meaning. So this is much deeper levels of application and synthesis and so on. I know it will take some time. I know everybody's busy. But one of the main complaints that we got, you should be able to get in touch with all the teachers through the Telegram group. If you can't do that, write to me and I'll give you the contact of anybody you want to get in touch with. One of the complaints we got about the course was that it didn't go deep enough. So please take the 45 minutes, at least for your personal reflection, to go deeper. Again, I know you're all busy, but it's time well spent. And of course, the pages, it says pages 73 to 78 are in the participants handbook, and where you refer to is noted in where the answers are. It says the name of the document, like it'll say check foundation document, page 3, and so forth and so on. Okay, so all the answers that are on page 4. Thank you, Rukmini. All right. I am teaching a Bhakti Shastri class in an hour, and I haven't had breakfast yet. So I don't want to go too far over time with general questions. This is the end of the class, and anybody who would like to leave now, you wouldn't be offending anybody if you would leave. Thank you very, 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 very much for your participation. Thank you for tolerating our glitches, our 2 teachers who got COVID and had to be replaced at the last minute. Whoa, our technical difficulties yesterday. Whoa. If anybody would like to stay, I could stay for another 10 minutes if there's anything that you would like to discuss further. Well, thank you so much. One thing you might consider doing, Bhaktivedanta Swami has translated the course into Russian. I don't think he's translated the whole supplementary material, the whole 283 pages yet into Russian. And it's been taught now twice to leaders in Russian. So you might consider having somebody translate into Hungarian. This seems like an appropriate course to be taught in the Bhakti University as part of the theology degree. And we have already some people I know who've taken the course once or twice who are now teaching it to others. As far as certificates, if it was done through the Mayapur Institute, it would be, but I'm sorry, we don't have, somebody's writing that. We just don't have the wherewithal within the Shastri Advisory Council to do that. I'm so sorry. If any of the participants wants to help write up design a certificate and get people's names on it and all that, we'd be happy to do that, but it's beyond my capacity. Anyway, that's something you could do. Also, I think it would be good if this course were included in things like the GBC College. You could write to Rupanuga in Laguna Beach and ask him to have it included in the leadership course. Anything like that this should definitely be included in anything for leaders. I've heard of, but I'm not familiar. So that my co-author Rukmini in our Varna book, she knows about it. Why don't we plan to have a talk about that and see how we could go forward? No, it's you didn't take up too much time at all. One other thing I can mention to everybody, if you want to go and teach this, that the lessons 1, 2, and 3 can stand alone. So questions 1, 2, and 3, it could be taught as a beginning course. Okay, and I see some people have written me, but I can't possibly, I'm good at multitasking, but I'm not God. So I can't really answer all the questions and talk here. I am the chair of the Shastrik Advisory Council. So I'm the point person. I mean, if you want to write about a particular lesson that one of the teachers taught, or sure, and I might refer you to other members of our team for something. So some things I might say, hey, you we really should talk to Bhaktivedanta Maharaj about that. We really should talk to Druta Karma Prabhu about that, or something like that. It's going very slowly because we're engaging Dr. Russell, who worked for many, many years as a professional video editor for news stations. So he is going through and editing out all participants' video and voice and replacing it with text. And it's a long, slow process. And then I have to review, and each one is an hour and a half, 2 hours long. I usually have to review every one at least twice before it goes live. So we only have one of them that's up there, and he started a YouTube channel. There's one, and we're almost finished with lesson 2. We're hoping also to get up there, like Radhika Raman, who wasn't able to teach lesson 1 here because he had COVID. He basically taught a slightly amended lesson 1 to the ISKCON Communications Gathering. So I'm trying to get a hold of that video, then have Dr. Russell do the similar editing for that, and add that to the YouTube channel. So we may have a more than one there, and that would be publicly available. I'm really glad you brought that up. When the GBC first convened a hermeneutic committee, which we detail that in our materials, that was the direction that they were going in. They were going in the direction of let's give the conclusions. And the Shastric Advisory Council took their work, put together, I think it was about 250 pages of giving conclusions, presented it to the GBC, and it was like a lead balloon. And actually, the Shastric Advisory Council didn't even want to do that. That wasn't the direction we wanted to go in, but they asked us to go in that direction, so we did. Then we reconvened. We met personally in Mayapur Dham, and we met again for 10 days in Milan, Italy, where our great thanks to Madhu Sevita and the team there. And we concluded that the understanding of Shastra is not like that. It's a skill that you teach people to reach conclusions within a boundary. It's not saying, this is the conclusion. It's creating a boundary within which there's unity in diversity, within which there's a group of acceptable conclusions, and outside of which the conclusions are not acceptable. Inside that boundary, the conclusions are within the understanding of Gaudiya Siddhanta, and outside of which they are not. And as soon as you just say this is the conclusion, then you shut down the other valid conclusions. I mean, it's interesting, right now here in Hillsborough, we're in the 10th canto, and many of the commentaries of Sanatana Goswami and Jiva Goswami particularly, in one tika, they may give 4 very different ways of understanding a particular verse. And the ways, the 4 different ways are to some extent mutually exclusive. So we would be remiss if we said, okay, this is the answer on high, and this is what you have to accept. The only thing that is the case for are the statements that are universal, eternal, and transcontextual. Those are in your participants manual on page 18, and there's a in-depth discussion in the supplementary material on those. And Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj is working with another small committee to come up with a booklet based on those 10 from the Adi Leela, as that this would be our understanding of Gaudiya Siddhanta as coming from Srila Prabhupada. That is a really good idea. Whether or not I will actually do it is another issue. With you don't want to know what my schedule is, but I don't have like a video studio. So, but that is a really, really good idea. And I will definitely take that under advisement, like short things, 5-10 minutes each, in addition to just having the lessons up. I think right now for the next month or so, just trying to get these 8 lessons up there being edited will be enough on my plate. And I'm working on an article for ISKCON Communications Journal of applying hermeneutics there. I am giving 2 conclusions. I am taking 2 questions. I'm taking the question where Prabhupada says one should be callous in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm using these hermeneutical things that you've all been taught to answer how do we deal with that statement that Prabhupada says we should be callous. And then I'm also looking at the example from the Bhagavatam of human trafficking and human sacrifice in the sacrifice of Harishchandra's son to the demigods. So in both of those cases, I'm using the hermeneutical process to reach conclusions. So I'm working on, those are my 2 big hermeneutical things that I'm doing right now. But maybe after those are done, I could consider something like that, and asking other members of the Shastric Advisory Council, we have 17, 18 members, if they'd be willing to do that as well. So asking different members, would you be willing to make a 5-10 minute video that we can add? All right, in the interest of the fact that Krishna says we should be temperate in our activities of eating, sleeping, working, and recreation. And I have another class in 45 minutes. I have a 3-hour Bhakti Shastri class that I am teaching, and I haven't yet had breakfast. So I hope you will excuse me that I'm going to follow Krishna's instructions in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and get something to eat. Thank you very, very much. And as Hari Parshad Prabhu says so nicely in Sanskrit, I will only say in English, whatever good you've gotten from anything that I've done here, that is all due to Srila Prabhupada and the various mentors that helped me in my life. Whatever bad is here is all mine. And I hope that you will please take the good, and I hope that you will forgive and overlook the bad. I know that we didn't go as deeply as many of you would have wanted. Hopefully you can explore more on your own or in small groups, and hopefully at some point there'll be a further course. And I'm hoping that some of you will take this and go on and teach hermeneutics in your own area and start to translate this into other languages. We will be putting in the Telegram group the instructor's manual, both in Word and in PDF, so that you can go ahead and do that. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki